All right, so this AMA style quiz, the idea here is you look up online. We do have an AMA style guide in the library if you want to do that, but most of it's online. And you're just going to identify the changes that you would make to each of these 10 statements, and then that will be that. But so that's that assignment for what we're going to do. If you look at your modules now, there is this University of Washington AMA style guide and this AMA one-page style guide that you should take a look at just for citation management aspect from how you source things, but also when we're doing the synthesis paper that you guys are getting started on, you want to also be able to use that for how you can formulate sentences. You know, I mean, I can never remember myself what numbers are like written in words and what numbers are like in number form. I think it's, for AMA, it may be all numerics, but I don't know. It all should be numerics. I mean, when you're reading, I don't want to read the word, just give me the numbers, but that's my own thing. So this gives you a couple of different aspects for that. The style quiz is there. And then like you see, this is scheduled to go live on Wednesday at 10:30. So you can review that and kind of see what, and it has the explanation underneath it as far as everything. So the second part of class, then I'm going to actually save to the end, is Endnote. Has anybody ever used Endnote? A little bit. Anybody besides them heard of Endnote? So how about, what are some of the other ones that are out? It's a citation creator. Right, so like there's some other ones out there. What are some other ones that people use? What? EasyBib, yeah, that's the one that a lot of people use. The difference between Endnote and EasyBib with that is Endnote will also work with Word in a Cite While You Write program. And so what that will do will allow you to insert the citation through Endnote into your writing, and then you can change from APA to AMA to Chicago just by changing that, and it will automatically change your entire paper. The reason that I bring Endnote up for this class is because AMA uses numerical citations. And true AMA uses numerical citations in order of appearance in the text. So compared to APA, right, where you put the citation in, and then that citation references the reference page. This you just put in a number, and that references the reference page. But if you were to all of a sudden add a reference to like the first sentence in your paper, then that would now become number one, and all the other references numbers would change. So you can imagine keeping track of all that. So if you use something like Endnote, and there's an Endnote free web version that works really good for just writing papers. If you were going to do a like huge thesis or something, obviously the paid version allows you to do much more of that. So that's kind of the reason behind it. I will save the video tutorial for the end of class because I would like I would like to make sure we have enough time to go over the synthesis assignment in however you want us to go over the synthesis assignment. So where would you like me to start? At the very beginning? Kind of at the beginning? You want me to just start talking about something and then like dipstick you guys and see where you're at? Dipsticking, right? Yes, it's good. No, it's bad in the middle. I don't know if I've used that in this class. All right. If I'm completely wasting your time and bored, I apologize. But I think it's in everybody's interest to make sure we're on the same page. 2 parts to the assignment, right? We got that? There are 2 parts, okay? First part, annotated bibliography. How many people have started their annotated bibliography? Yes, no, kinda. Anybody got all 5 done? Yeah, there we go. How was it? Yeah. Hmm? If you, depending on when you did it. Okay, we'll hit level of evidence again then. I can almost bet they are all 1B, but I'm not sure. So of those that did it, which part, level of evidence was a sticking part? What other parts might been a little sticky or more difficult? Were there any others? So when we look at intervention and comparison, these are the 2 groups usually of the research. So the intervention group is the group that's receiving whatever the independent variable is, and the comparison is the other group. So oftentimes in this, it will be, the intervention will be the cooling device, and the comparison will be no cooling device. Yes. So then if there are multiple interventions and they're all being compared, then that's where you'll have like a multifactorial design, and so you would list each intervention. And oftentimes, right, if there are multiple interventions and then they're comparing between them, then it really becomes, you know, the intervention and the comparisons are the same, right? Because you're just comparing between interventions. But the reason that we have them separated here is because it's most important to know with the comparison, are we comparing between another intervention, or are we comparing against a control or a pseudo control? Because oftentimes, let's go with like a training study. Every type of physical activity that you do will improve performance compared to no physical activity, right? And so if we're doing a true control, that might decrease the evidence in some. On the same note, if we flip-flop, let's say that we know what the best training is, like running, right? I mean, we know running is effective at getting you better at running, right? But there are times when people can't run. So maybe we're comparing like underwater running to normal running. Well, it would make sense if underwater running is not any different than normal running. That does not mean that underwater running is not effective. Get the difference? So that's why we specifically need to mention the comparison group. Were there any others in there, or any others that somebody has a question on what I am looking for? I hate how I phrased that. What information from there would be helpful in doing the larger assignment? You're not trying to guess what I'm looking for in this. This is a annotated bibliography for you to help you write your paper. For the most part, I will grade the annotated bibliography based off of effort, not correctness. I'll look and say, do they have all of the things and there's not blatant errors that represent a lack of effort. Otherwise, it'll be about the paper. Yep.
So for the level or the cross-reference articles, I just go to the bottom where it says references, and then if there are any like related articles, and then just put those in there.
Correct. So if you guys can't ever hear online, just let me know and I'll repeat the question. But for cross-referencing, for the cross-reference articles, the idea is when we're doing annotated bibliographies, our goal is to gain a saturation of the information available. So normally your annotated bibliography does not have a set number of articles. It has, you know, I'm going to do it until I've read and know what I'm doing. So the cross-reference articles are, again, exactly what you said, just references at the end of the article you're reading that might be applicable to the question. So eventually, if you're doing a thorough annotated bibliography, there would be no cross-referenced articles that in your number 11 cross-referenced articles that weren't also somewhere in your annotated bibliography, because you would just keep circling until it became the end. How do we feel on comfort level for our ability to complete the annotated bibliography portion? Everything is due Friday, correct. Feel like we're good with that? All right. So the second part of the assignment is this paper. And so the paper is just an assignment. This is your last assignment for preparation before we start writing our systematic reviews. And so as such, the purpose of this assignment is to practice writing concisely. So you have 15 articles, 5 that you did your annotated bibliographies on, and then the 10 that are at the bottom, which are similar structured annotated bibliographies, which these are just student bibliographies from previous students doing this assignment before I assigned the articles. So even those aren't guaranteed to be 100% correct. And the important thing is it doesn't really matter. It's their interpretation, right? Like, we're not, annotated bibliographies are not math problems, correct, incorrect. They're very much, were they helpful to the person writing? So anyway, you have 750 to 1,250 words to answer the question, do external cooling devices improve performance in physically active individuals compared to passive cooling? The only way to get all 15 articles cited, and they all need to be in-text cited, meaning that in the text I should see numbers 1 through 15 through there, and each article needs to be used at least once in the text as a source. And the only way to do that is to combine results from different studies into your paper. How you go about doing that is entirely up to you. Last time I gave some examples of some statements like that. But what I want to make sure that you understand was that was not an outline of the paper as much as it was just some example statements. That would not work for a paper because it's too choppy, right? A paper needs to actually be a paper with some flow. So in order to get the flow, once you've done your annotated bibliography, I would print off those 5 sheets of paper. This is just me. You do not have to do it this way, but this is an example, and then you can ask questions. I would then also print off the 10 articles that I did. So now I have 15 pieces of paper in my hands. I would go through on those and highlight what I feel is the most important thing on those sheets of paper. From there, I would try to see if there were any themes. If there are large themes that emerge, great. If not, then we're going to go into a more standard type paper. In the standard type paper for this, the main purpose is to answer this question. So we're going to answer it right off the bat, provide some evidence to our answer, and then come back. Very circular. I mean, that's my strategy. If you get a better writing strategy that works for you, great. I am not a great writer. You know, I am much more about the process. And then, you know, I mean, I literally professionally pay people to review my stuff for grammar and flow and all that. So don't expect me to be a lot of help with that. But it's more about the structure. So I like the circular sort of thing because, like, I've read a lot of these, and people, you know, that have, you know, good beginning answers the question right off the bat, then some people will stop reading. Right? You got to think of this as similar to like your discussion type portion of a research article. So I would take then and take the clinical significance and the application portion of each of these papers, and I would make 2 piles. One that says it works and I see a good application, one that says I don't. And I would look at the 2 sizes of the pieces of paper. If there is if it's like 14-1, I think that's pretty obvious. If it's closer, you know, like 10-5, then I'm going to go look at this level of evidence. Oh, I forgot to go back to the level of evidence. Don't let me forget. I go back to the level of evidence and see, does the 5 have much higher level of evidence than the 10, where I might say they're equal? Or is it the 10 that's much higher than the 5? Or if they're the same, then I'm probably going to start talking about, you know, the fact that it's a mixed sort of bag aspect. And so then I'm going to write statements like I showed last time about that, making those. Does that make sense on that introductory type paragraph? Cool. So before I forget, I'm going to stop sharing this, and I am going to go back and let's look at those levels of evidence one more time. I believe that was in the critical appraisal. So level of evidence. The purpose of the level of evidence is to describe in a number and a subletter everything you guys wrote in your critical appraisal paper for the most part. So that way, when you read that and you know what level of evidence it is, you have a good understanding of the methodological quality. So the way you determine the level of evidence, assuming that it doesn't say, sometimes they will, I mean, in more modern research as well as in higher level articles, they ask the author to put the level of evidence like in a keyword or somewhere up there. But what you have to do is you have to first start off with, are there groups or are there no groups? If there are no groups, then you are looking at 4 or 5. And these are case series, case studies, where basically you just have the description of cases. There is no real comparisons. If you have one group, and by group, I mean like one group and one intervention, like that's a group, they all receive the same sort of thing, right? One group received the same treatment. That is a case control study. That is a level 3. If there are 2 or more groups that are compared, it is either a 1 or a 2. If the groups are randomly assigned, it's a 1. If they are not randomly assigned, they exist for some other reason, it's a 2. If it is a systematic review, it will say that in the title. Otherwise, we are only looking at A or B. So a systematic review of randomized controlled trials, then it is a 1A. They said most of these, I am assuming, are 1Bs. There might be some 2Bs in there. I don't remember. From there, I asked you to practice Pedro scoring all level 1 and 2 articles. Just practice, go through, answer yes or no to those questions, put the number. So when you're reporting the level of evidence, you can just put 1B, then a comma, and then 8 as your Pedro score. Because that's what it means. You would, if you were writing this out, there would be a key or something there. But that's what I asked you to report. Good on level of evidence, at least a little bit better. So continuing with the paper, this is your paper. I want to continue to emphasize this is your paper. Organize it how it makes sense and works with your writing structure within this word limit. I don't want us all to become robots writing the same way, because I guarantee some of you guys are much better writers than I am as far as coming up with flow and transition and all that sort of stuff. So as long as you write it and you include all 15 articles in text and you're within that 750 to 250 words, your format is great. Then it just comes down to, did you answer this question? Mm-hmm. Okay. The short answer is just going to be numbers after sentences. The long answer is the long answer is in these style guides that are on your modules. This one page style guide for the AMA is my favorite because it kind of just gives you in one page what you need. So your in-text citations look like this. So in the sentence somewhere, right, outside of periods and commas, you do a superscript numeral. So what this would mean is, as previously, meaning in other research in articles 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right, that's the dash, and 19. So you separate by commas, and you can dash if it's the same. And these go in the order that they appear in your paper. So the first citation will be number 1. Yes. Whichever one you want. So yeah, if you're going like 1 through 3 and it's like those 3 in the same sentence, it doesn't matter. Or at least I don't think it matters. I've never paid any attention to that. There's probably some rule with it. Yeah, alphabetically maybe, but so at the end, not including your, this is not included in your word limit, obviously. You will have a reference list that looks like this. Yes, so those numbers correspond. That's how you know what it is. Correct. All 15 have to be in there in some substantial way. And by substantial, I just mean that its primary, whatever it says is most important, should be reflected somewhere in there. Yeah, so like in your annotated bibliography assignment, it includes the citations for each article. So you can just, when you cite this article, you just put that right in there. And these are still formatted a little old school, so to speak. This DOI number should be included in references, but I mean, it doesn't always have to be. The DOI number is basically like the serial number of the article. And so like you could theoretically, you know, get the article just by its DOI number. So they recommend including DOI numbers. But you also have just as much information here to get it. The DOI sometimes will also help. I think the DOI is created through some of the major databases. So that way the DOI, it's also linked there. So like you can type in the DOI to like a PubMed or Medline and it will bring up the article. So that's a little bit more helpful. But on the other hand, if you cut and paste the title and put it into PubMed, it will do the same thing. So the middle portion of your paper is where you really have to decide what's going to be most important. That's where you put your answer into some sort of context. So like I gave some examples about talking about the subjects and what type of subjects the research was on. There were some examples about some methods and some interventions and whatever you think. And so go through and look at your now key points or what I call it, key points, key something. 3 key points, right? With those 3 key points, go and look at them and say, now maybe I organize all 3 or all 15 articles based on key points, right? This article talks about this key, you know, these are the ones that talk about this key point, all that. So that way, if there's like 3 or 4 articles, they all have a similar key point to it, and I think that's important, I can talk about that and then just cite the article. So not my only recommendation, but if there was one way to go about this that I've seen be most successful for students, it's to write some sort of outline or plan first based off of your readings and then start to cite. As soon as you start to cite while you're writing, like at the very beginning, you get caught up into single article describing methods and results. It just happens. That's what we've trained you to do for years and years and years, to be very thorough. And that's very appropriate for most writing. Not in exercise science and medicine because they won't read it. Nobody reads in exercise science 100-page literature reviews. They just don't. So writing them is only done when exercise science students or writers are forced into the academic world and have to play by their rules. I didn't actually put $20 in my dissertation, but that's the running joke. You take $20 because all dissertations at school are printed and put in the library, right? So go find yours, put $20 in it, and come back 10 years later, and there's your 20 bucks, because nobody is going to have moved it. Now, I really wonder how many people do that, and so maybe I should just go through dissertations at the library and see if I can collect money. What? No, I didn't. Mainly because it wasn't even worth the my time to go find where dissertations are kept. That's how little I was going to use dissertations, especially in today's day and age where a lot of them aren't published online, and so they're only in the library. And so if they're, there's 3 levels of research, right? This is what the real levels of evidence should be, right? There's print evidence, there's online evidence, and then there's free full text evidence, right? Free full text evidence is the highest level of evidence, right? That's what gets written about the most. I think that's funny. But I'm weird. But that's not new to anybody in this room. What else can I do for you on the synthesis paper?
Where do you find most of your key points? Does it sound like you've been going in the method and then point those out really? Right? That seems pretty difficult. Do you find them more in the introduction?
No, like if I don't know what I'm reading about, then I will. But the key points for there are going to be like, when I'm done reading the article, and I've read through the methods and the results, I'm like, I put down the application, and this is where I think it can be applied. Then I just write down for the key points. It's whatever is memorable to me in that. So be like, key point for me almost always is positive or negative results, right? Made a difference, didn't make a difference. Yes or no, right in there. Another key point might be if it, the Wingo article we wrote, like a big important part for me of that article was it was on highly trained cyclists, right? So whatever I read about that article and try to interpret it, I'm thinking highly trained cyclists, right? Which is actually probably a good thing in that sort of situation because they would be less likely to show positive effects because their cardiovascular system is less taxed. And then usually because unless you are able to find extreme cohesion, I'm usually then looking at either separating it based off of interventions, if I have to use a bunch of different interventions, or if it was all one intervention, like I'm looking at just running, sprint training, right? There's a lot of studies on sprint training. So then I would look at comparisons or I would look at outcomes, not comparisons, outcomes. Because that's where articles are going to differentiate on. So like in this one, probably one of your key points would be what their intervention was, because we have a bunch of different types of interventions. And so we talk about in the answering of the question, it's always, it depends, right? The answer is always, it depends, so that's not helpful. But in this case, because we have a bunch of different interventions, it is quite possible that external cooling as a whole does not work, but some interventions do. You know, like an external fan it counts as external cooling, so it gets lumped in, but the studies that looked at external fans said no, but the ones that looked at, you know, ice vests say yes. I don't even know if there are ice vests. I specifically do not reread these articles, otherwise I end up writing the paper. Which I will do more of when it's your individual systematic reviews. But this is more practice. Did that answer that kind of maybe?
Yeah.
And again, those are just me. Like, it's what's important to you. So if you did something else, don't change it to try to mimic me. So I spent a little bit more time on that than was originally planned, but, well, originally planned when I wrote the syllabus and said I'm only going to cover things once, which is never the case, right? So, but spent more time on that, so we did not get to the video, which is okay, because if you need to watch a video on your own, that's a lot easier. So there is this EndNote basic overview video here, as well as additional EndNote video tutorials. You have to at least click on this to say you completed the activity. But short of that, you don't need to use EndNote or spend time learning EndNote unless that is something that you want to play around with or get used to. If you're considering going on to graduate school where you would need to do some sort of advanced research or thesis, someday you're probably going to need to learn that because you're going to be flipping these things around all over the place, you know, changing citation methods, all that. And as much work as it is to learn EndNote, it's a lot more work to start going, okay, here's this paper, number 1 is now number 7. And I mean, the worst is some journals do a hybrid. And so they do numerical references, but then the reference list is by alphabetical. So like the first reference could be like 16. It's like, why on earth would I be trying to find these alphabetically? You know, like if I know that's 1, oh, that probably was in the introduction. Or if I have like, if it says 3, 4, 5, right? It'd be, in one sentence, it'd be nice to go and look at the references 3, 4, 5 all next to each other, not 7, 18, and 21. But that's just me complaining. So if you want to, go ahead and take a look at that. And stop recording.